It is finally time for Vina Victoria, or should I call her Siege Alta, because I just know her as Siege most of the time, and I'll be calling her that from now on. So as you guys have seen on the announcement, we will be getting a new event on the 8th of April, and hence a new banner as well. This is not a limited banner, even though it's an altered operator, so you can rest assured for that. And you know, it's time to make a Shiju pool video. Except that this time around, there's a bit of a situation happening when it comes to this banner and CN getting another operator actually a day before we get Siege Alta. And even though technically speaking, they're different classes, they kind of play a similar role. So I will be talking about that down the road when I talk about the skills, and it's gonna kind of quite significantly affect my recommendation here. Well, no, actually, no. I wasn't going to change much, but there's another layer of reasoning why I make the recommendation that I'm going to make. So I will say, spoiler alert from when I'm going to talk about it. So rest assured, and just if you're listening, you can just skip, and I'll make sure that it's going to be a really short part of the video. So don't worry about it. So as per usual, I'm going to give you guys a short answer of should you pull this banner. And I'll go into the details of the kit, the talent, module, skill, and whatnot. So first of all, really sadly to say that I cannot recommend you to pull Siege Alta. And it really hurts me saying that because Siege has a place in my special place in my heart. I've been using her a lot before Myrtle came out. And you know, she was one of my favorite vanguards to use, and you know, I've been using her. We've known her for so many years. It's really hard to say no to her, but that's just how these kind of videos works. It's more about clearing content, you know, than emotions. So let's talk about Siege Alta. So Siege Alta is a arts fighter. As the name would suggest, she deals arts damage instead of physical. She's got pretty decent base attack, not the cheapest to deploy, and only blocks one enemy at the same time. So previous arts fighter would be operators like Surtur or Vina in 6 stars. So you would roughly know how this class would behave. Obviously, she's a bit different, but I'll talk about that when we talk about her skills. Now let's take a look at her talent. So I'm gonna ignore the module first. So her first talent is that Siege Alta and ally units standing on the surrounding 8 tiles of her will take 20% less physical damage with potential, that is 22%. And for every single ally unit within that area, so the surrounding 8 tiles of her, Siege Alta will get plus 5% attack or plus 6% at potential 5. With module, that will become 26% or plus 2, so 28% less physical damage taken, and plus 7% attack per unit surrounding her, or plus 8% if you have potential 5. So this is quite an interesting talent, especially when it really comes to your actual usage of her. You can actually kind of split this talent into 2 parts, the decreased damage taken part and then the buffing part, because the buffing part you never usually get a 3x3 square and you squeeze all your operators in there. That is kind of rare. So there is a situation where you can actually use that, but that will only happen in skill 3. And so we kind of don't really see that part in use with other skills. And the first part is just always on because it's just decreased damage taken. And her second talent is that for every time she deals the first hit on an enemy, she will, what is this thing called? Treble them? The same debuff as Degenbrechia. So when enemies are blocked, they will not be able to deal normal attack for 4 seconds. With potential 3, that will become 5 seconds. So as you can see, this kind of kit is trying to suggest that she wants to stand on the field for a long time while dealing good damage, potentially, right? So that is her kit, and I would highly suggest that when we eventually get her, if you really do want to use her, get this module, because you also get a +8 attack speed when she's not blocking enemies. That actually does come into effect with her skill 3. So if you do want to use her, make sure that you get this module unlocked, because that is quite a huge buff, both with her trait and her first talent, and obviously base attack. So that would be her base kit. Now, skill 1. So skill 1 actually does not gain decreased SP as you go to M3. So it will be 5 SP no matter what, and you cannot charge this skill twice. So the effect of this skill is that her next attack will deal all true AoE damage to all surrounding enemies for up to 180% of her attack as true damage. So you can kind of see this as the old Siege skill 2, but without the DP generation, and you don't get extra SP if you kill an enemy. So it kind of is like a downgrade version of the original Siege's skill 2. So hence you see why I wouldn't even bother to raise this skill, because if I do want to use this kind of skill, I would just use the old Siege. So this is kind of a really boring skill as per usual. So let's talk about skill 2. So skill 2, as you guys can probably tell by this orange word, you've probably already seen this a billion times, but this is a infinite duration skill. So there's 2 effects for this skill. The first effect is a passive effect where within the area of her first talent, so the surrounding 8 tiles, if there is 2 or more allied units, Siege Altar will gain plus 0.5 SP per second. And this is actually a huge boost, because even at M3, this skill does take 70 SP, so 70 seconds to charge without this effect. But with this effect, you can bring it down to 47% to get this skill activated. So that's a huge increase. Once the skill is activated, she will gain 1 attack range. So instead of only hitting the tile in front of her, she can hit 2 tiles in front of her. She'll have plus up to 180% attack, and she will hit 1 more target. So basically this is Blaze skill 2, but hits less enemies and deals arc damage. And here's why you see why I didn't mastery do M3 for this skill as well. Because if I already have operators like, let's say as an example, Opianas, Blaze, all these lane holders, especially with this skill, you really wouldn't want to use this. You really wouldn't want to use her alone, because you don't get any increased defense, and this archetype is kind of squishy, so you'll probably be putting her behind a defender like, as an example, Zarya. And in that case, I already have Blaze for the same job, which actually performs a bit better compared to Siege Altar. So this is not the kind of skill that I would use this skill for. And I want to talk about how this skill actually works with her second talent, so the treble part. So as I said in the second talent part, the first time she hits an enemy will go into treble. But because this skill hits 2 tiles away, the moment that she hits an enemy, the enemy still needs to travel 2 tiles to be blocked by her, in which it might already be 4 seconds or 3 seconds has passed. So the treble effect actually goes away really quickly and might not even take effect if you just use her alone. And that's where you kind of want to put her behind someone else, because let's say if you put her behind Zarya, will just block it after the enemy travels 1 tile. So as you can see, this skill is kind of not really working out well with her talent, and it's just the kind of skill that I just wouldn't really pull an operator for. So that would be skill 2. And that last skill 3, as you guys can see, this is the only skill I have M3'd, and this is the only skill that I would consider to be worthy of my resources to M3. So once you activate this skill, immediately she will summon tigers on all surrounding tiles. So the effect of her talent 1, that has a ground tile that you can deploy operators onto, and she will summon up to eight tigers on them. And this is where I said that her first talent really comes into play, because these tigers will also trigger her first talent, where they will give her extra attack. So these tigers have up to, so these are connected to her levels. They each have 4,000 HP, up to 500 attack, and up to 300 defense, and they all do true damage. So these tigers are there to basically support her talent and actually the remaining of this skill. So within this skill duration, she can also hit enemies that are blocked by allied units that are in the area of her first talent, so the surrounding 8 tiles. So it doesn't need to be these lions that are blocking them. It can also be another operator. As long as they are blocked within that by those units, she can hit them. She'll have up to plus 190% attack. She can hit up to 4 units at the same time. She'll have decreased attack interval by 0.25 seconds. So this kind of brings her attack interval down to once per second. So she'll hit once per second, and she'll do true damage. So the way I would describe this skill is Nero the Radiant Knight, skill 3, but better. And that kind of sums up a lot when it comes to this operator. So before I even describe like when you would want to use this skill, let me ask a question for those of you who has Nero the Radiant Knight. When was the last time you actually used her for her skill 3? And if you're like me, your answer is probably not once in the past 2 or so years. And that can be said about this skill as well. Obviously, there are like some things that separates Siege Altar and Nero the Radiant Knight. First of all, she doesn't need enemies to be blocked to do true damage, so that is already a plus. Second of all, her range is better, so she's got a more flexible range. And third of all, she does do a bit way more damage, and she also hits 4 at the same time. So obviously, she is she is quite buffed compared to Nero Altar's skill 3. The only issue that I have with this skill is that, first of all, I don't even use true damage most of the time now, because I just use elemental damage from Nymph, and that is basically true damage at the moment, and that has not changed for the next 6 months coming for us. So first of all, I don't need true damage. Second of all, and this is where the spoiler comes in. So spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear the spoilers, you can probably skip a few seconds, like a few times ahead. We're gonna get Monster really soon, and Monster's skill 3 also does true damage, but has lower skill cooldown, because this does take 50 seconds to cooldown. Monster has way lower cooldown for her skill 3. Monster, you can actually choose where she will be dealing the true damage. And another thing is that she doesn't need enemies to be blocked. They just need to be in her surrounding 8 tiles. She can do true damage towards them. She does do a bit less total damage within the skill duration, and also she only hits 3 instead of hit 4. But I would say for the flexibility and shorter cooldown, it is totally worth it. And Monster actually heals for 1,000 HP or something per second, roughly. I don't really know the exact number yet, because we haven't really seen the operator. We haven't really gotten the operator yet when I'm recording this. I just did some calculation on the skill showcase on CN, but basically it's good healing, similar damage, actually quite similar in terms of total damage, better cooldown, and more flexible, because you can choose where you want to deploy her, where you want the skill to be activated within her attack range. So actually more choices, whereas when it comes to Siege Altar, you have to redeploy her all the time. So that is quite a huge difference. And yeah, that's basically the reason why I wouldn't recommend you to pull her. So that is skill 3. Now, at the end, let's talk about her use case. So when it comes to normal events, there are some times that you might want true damage, but I would say that most of the time you just wouldn't need true damage. You can say, oh, maybe in the future we will. I can only tell you that we won't need a true damage for the next 6 months coming when it comes to events. And if you really do want a true damage just in case, and you don't have Calcit, you don't have Nymph plus the Nymph combo basically, and you also don't have Neil the Radiant Knight, in that case, sure, pull for her, because you know true damage is true damage. You can't really replace true damage. But if you wait 6 months, we might get another operator that does a better job. So if you skip the whole spoiler part, you just need to know that. So if you can't wait for 6 months, you can pull her for her now. But I can tell you, for the next 6 months before that operator eventually comes by, there's not a single situation where you do need true damage. So for normal events, it's just that. For CC though, there's not a single CC that we do need this true damage, but we don't know about future CC, and CCs are really rare. But if you do want to prepare for CC, true damage is true damage after all. So if you're the kind of guy that wants to go for the highest risk, yeah, you probably want all operators anyway. Go ahead and pull. When it comes to IS though, especially when it comes to IS5, because that's the IS that we'll be going with for the next 6 months, true damage is still a really weak meta when it comes to IS5, and the really only use for true damage is ending 2. And as most of you probably would have realized by now, there's so many ways to solve that stage. You really don't need true damage. I really wouldn't recommend pulling just for the sake of IS5. But again, the more operator you have, the more fun IS is, right? So if you just want to have fun, sure, you can consider it, but I really wouldn't say, oh, this is a must pull for a certain IS at the moment. And then when it comes to SSS, yeah, true damage doesn't really shine there. And if you want to go with AFK strategy, you have other better AFKs to do the job. I would actually say the same with RA. The fact that you need lions to block enemies and the total damage is still quite minimum, I think you're better off with just other operators, unless you're going with like the hard mode where the enemy gains like a bunch of stats time over time. But even then, enemies will have so much HP that I think it's like 50 something K total damage with her skill 3 can deal. You're not gonna deal enough damage. So yeah, I don't think she's that good for RA as well. So that would be all the use cases that I can think of. And not gonna lie, it really does hurt for me to say this, but yeah, I think they did her dirty, man. Hypergrip really screwed this one up, because in my opinion, like, what they could have done was, obviously I know it's not gonna happen, you know, make her use Excalibur and do like true AoE damage throughout the entire field or something like that. With like, it doesn't need to be that much damage, it just needs to be, you know, fancy. It just needs to look cool. Then I would buy it. I would like 100%. I would be so excited for it. But the actual effect, as you guys probably have seen, if I actually did record actual footage, I hope I did. But if I didn't, it's just not that cool looking, if you know what I'm talking about. And I just would like something a bit more cooler when it comes to this operator. And it is what it is. I don't really have a better way to explain it, and it's just really sad to see them screw up such a beloved operator. And I hope that future operators that we really love, that we already know and eventually getting alters, will be treated better. That would be it for this video, and I hope you guys found this video helpful and may help you make up your mind on if you want to pull this banner or not. With that being said, I'll see you guys when the banner is actually out, when I'm going to be pulling and get hit by the bad luck because I told you guys not to pull her. And whenever I tell you guys not to pull an operator, I get screwed by the banner. Yay! I'll see you guys then. Bye.